update school year 1920 via webinar. And our presenters today are Holly and Rachel. And I'm not sure which of you are going to start, but go ahead and take it away. I'll move the slides over.
Thank you. Well, hi everyone. This is Holly Steinlage. I'm an area consultant for child nutrition and wellness, and I'm going to start us out with the training today. We're very excited to be having our very first ever webinar admin update, and we're glad all of you could join us today. So our purpose today is to cover the administrative information you're going to need to get the new school year off to a great start. Hard to believe we're already rolling into a new school year, but last year flew by. So our objectives today are to provide you with the tools to understand your program requirements, including recent changes that we've had, to eliminate errors and audit findings which cost your sponsor money, and to perform your job with confidence. So you guys can ask questions at any time during the training in the chat box, or of course you can wait until the end and we can unmute you, and you can ask questions at that time. There will also be an evaluation at the end of the training, and we'll be using a SurveyMonkey link that you can provide your feedback. So be thinking about any suggestions or feedback you might have throughout the training. All of our classes are approved by the School Nutrition Association for continuing education for those that are certified, and individuals are responsible for keeping track of their own hours and certificates and then having these available if audited by SNA. You will have to wait until the end of the webinar and follow the directions to receive credit for attendance. So again, make sure you watch until the very end of the webinar, and there will be a link provided at that time where you can register your attendance. All right, so today we're going to cover program updates, civil rights, confidentiality, determining eligibility, and then some announcements and resources. And just please note that there will be detailed verification training in September via webinar and face-to-face opportunities in each region of the state. So you'll want to watch the monthly update for information about these training opportunities. Nutrition and wellness positively impacts the health and success of each student. Child nutrition programs complement the Kansas State Board of Education's vision, further the goals of school redesign, and meet Kansas education system's accreditation requirements. Access to nutrition boosts each child's ability to succeed at school and life, and healthy students are better students. So we challenge each of you to think about ways you can positively impact the success of each student through nutrition. The Director's Toolkit will be referenced throughout this training, and it's available at the link on this slide on our website. Our Advisory Council recommended that this resource be developed to provide essential information for new and seasoned authorized representatives and food service directors. The resource will be updated as needed and can be found again on our CANEAT website, and it's a great source of information for, again, anyone who's new and seasoned. So we're going to jump into program updates. Our first program update is in regard to paid lunch equity. As you may know, Congress provided an exemption for sponsors with a positive or zero balance in the Federal Food Service Fund to paid lunch equity provisions for school year 1920 in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2019. So this was extended again from last year. With this flexibility, any sponsor with a positive or zero balance in their nonprofit food service fund as of December 31st, 2018 is exempt from the PLE requirements for school year 1920. And again, this only affects school year 1920. Sponsors are encouraged to complete the PLE tool and determine the unrounded average weighted price so that if information is needed for next year, if the PLE tool is required for school year 2020-2021, you'll have that information to complete the tool. And sponsors can check the PLE exemption box on their sponsor application and can claim, and no paper exemption form is necessary. If you would like to determine your PLE requirements, you can complete the tool and determine your target school year 19-20 paid lunch price and adjust your prices accordingly. And then the PLE tool with instructions included on the first tab is on that Can Claim Checklist tab. Our next program update is for the Child Nutrition Program flexibilities for milk, whole grains, and sodium requirements. In December of 2018, USDA released the final rule, Child Nutrition Program flexibilities for milk, whole grains, and sodium requirements. This final rule codified with some extensions 3 menu planning flexibilities temporarily established by the interim final rule of the same title. So the first flexibility is the whole grain rich flexibility. The final rule will require that half of the weekly grains in the school lunch and breakfast menu be whole grain rich. So this ends the need for the exemption process. There is no change to the whole grain rich criteria. Whole grain rich products must contain at least 50% whole grains, and the remaining grains in the product must be enriched. Other grains in the weekly menu must be enriched. The final rule also added a sodium flexibility. The final rule provides schools in the lunch and breakfast programs more time for gradual sodium reduction by retaining sodium target 1 through the end of school year 2023-24. And then it will continue to target 2 in 24-25, and then it eliminated that final target that would have gone into effect in school year 22-23. The final rule also broadened the milk options in the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program, and it now allows operators to permanently offer flavored low-fat milk. And for consistency across all programs, it also allows flavored low-fat milk in the Special Milk Program for children and in the Child and Adult Care Food Program for participants ages 6 and older. With this milk flexibility is a requirement for milk variety. So schools must offer unflavored milk at each meal service in the lunch program and the breakfast program. Variety cannot be limited to flavor milk choices. For example, flavored fat-free and flavored low-fat milk. So a school would not be able to offer, for example, strawberry low-fat milk and chocolate fat-free milk. There would have to be an unflavored option made available. Schools can offer fat-free unflavored and low-fat unflavored and meet the requirement of offering a variety of milk options. There is no longer a fat content variety requirement. A school can have 2 non-fat and 2 low-fat choices as long as one option is unflavored. Do note that milk variety does not apply to CACFP, the after-school snack service, or the special milk program. These meal services don't have that requirement to offer a variety of milk because they're much smaller in size and resources. So a frequently asked question is, does the milk flexibility and variety outlined in the final rule extend to preschool meal patterns? And the answer is no. The milk flexibility and variety requirements do not extend to preschool meal pattern. However, in situations where a school has preschoolers and older children being served in the same service area at the same time, in other words, commingling, and they choose to serve the K-5 meal pattern to both the preschoolers and the K-5 students, the preschoolers can be served the flavored milk as part of a reimbursable meal. So we've got our first poll question for the day, and you guys should be able to, Julie will have the poll pop up and you'll be able to answer the question. So our first question, schools can offer 1% chocolate milk and skim strawberry milk as the 2 milk options. Is this true or false? All right. It looks like most everyone has answered false. And so as we discussed, you must have that unflavored option made available. So there's got to be a variety and one option has to be unflavored. Our next question is, at least blank of the weekly grains offered in the lunch and breakfast programs must be whole grain rich. Alrighty, looks like most of you have answered, and we've got 100% correct response rate at half of the weekly grains must be whole grain rich. Nicely done. So our next flexibility is under professional standards. USDA has provided hiring flexibility under professional standards regulations effective April 30th, 2019. The flexibility addresses the hiring challenges of small local education agencies that struggle to find applicants with school nutrition program experience. The flexibility only addresses hiring standards for those local education agencies of 2,499 or less, so our smallest category. As part of the flexibility, USDA does now allow other relevant food service experience, such as working in a hospital or restaurant, to be considered as acceptable experience for hiring in a local education agency of 2,499 or less. This food service experience can include unpaid food service experience, such as volunteer time or internships, as long as proper documentation is obtained to verify the experience. The relevancy of the documented experience is at the discretion of the state agency and will be determined on a case-by-case basis. Flexibility also allows state agency discretion for a local education agency of 2,499 or less to use school food service funds to pay a new director's salary on an interim basis if the new director does not meet hiring standards. A state agency approved plan has to be in place for how the director will gain proficiency and achieve compliance with requirements. So in Kansas, a new director can achieve compliance through the state recognized Kansas Certificate in Child Nutrition Management. To request approval to use the school food service funds to pay a new director's salary on an interim basis, you can complete the form Request for KSDE Approval of a Food Service Director Candidate Professional Development Plan. And this can be found in Food Service Facts on our CANEAT website under Related Forms, and it's Form 23A. So now we're going to move on to the Child and Adult Care Food Program in school settings. The new meal pattern for CACFP was effective as of October 2017 for pre-K, and the ounce equivalent requirement is effective for CACFP October 2019. Some points that are good to note for school sponsors, some differences between CACFP and the National School Lunch Program, are that schools serving pre-K children will still follow all of the National School Lunch Program rules and regulations. For example, identifying the reimbursable meal and following professional standards requirements. You will just serve meals consistent with the CACFP 3 through 5-year-old age grade group meal pattern requirements. In the school breakfast and National School Lunch Program, flavored milk is allowable. However, all milk served to children 3 through 5 years old must be unflavored unless commingled. Another difference is that there's no sugar limit set for breakfast cereals and yogurt in the school breakfast and lunch program, whereas there is a limit in CACFP. And then another important one is that in CACFP, the minimum meat alternate requirement daily for kids aged 3 through 5 is 1.5 ounce equivalents. But in the National School Lunch Program, the minimum allowable is 1 ounce per day. So on those days where you're serving only 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate for your National School Lunch Program meal pattern, your pre-K kiddos will need an additional 1/2 ounce equivalent. And then there have also been a few questions on Smart Snacks in Schools compliance versus allowable items for CACFP. So please note that just because an item meets the Smart Snacks requirements does not mean it automatically meets the CACFP requirements. So a good example is that a granola bar may meet Smart Snacks standards, but because it's a grain-based dessert, it would not be allowed to be served to your preschool-aged children at meals or snacks. We do have lots of good information on our Can Eat website under CACFP, guidance, menu planning, and production records. There's a slideshow with a bunch of frequently asked questions, and there's also a specific section in the resources entitled CACFP in School Settings. So if you have, if you're commingled or you're not commingled and have to follow the CACFP meal pattern, I would recommend checking that out. All right, our next update is in regard to crediting. So you guys may have seen that in April of this year, USDA released, I think, 6 policy memos allowing for foods previously not creditable in child nutrition programs to be creditable. So we're going to go through each of these policy memos. The first one was SP 21/2019, and this allowed the crediting of shelf-stable, dried and semi-dried meat, poultry, and seafood snacks to credit toward the meat component in a reimbursable meal or snack. So program operators can use these in any meal or snack, and it's not limited to meals and snacks served off-site. To credit these products, program operators will follow the crediting principles used for all other products made from meat, poultry, or seafood, and you can see the food buying guide for more information on crediting these products. SP 22/2019 allowed for the crediting of coconut, hominy, masa, and corn flour in child nutrition programs. So previously, coconut and hominy did not meet the requirement for any component, but they could be served as extra food items. And now, in an effort to meet the growing and diverse cultural needs of our program participants, coconut and hominy can now be credited. So these coconut is going to be credited just like any other fruit based on volume served. So at least an 1/8 cup of fresh or frozen coconut must be served to credit towards the fruit component. Please note that dried coconut, coconut flour, and coconut oil are not creditable. You could use fresh and frozen coconut to enhance the taste and presentation of salads, smoothies, or other dishes served with meals or snacks. Juices labeled as 100% juice, including coconut water, will continue to credit towards the fruit component per volume served. Hominy can also now credit, and it will credit towards the vegetable or the grain component, depending on how it's offered. In its whole form, hominy credits towards the vegetable component as a starchy vegetable. When it's offered in a dried, milled form, such as grits, it credits towards the grain component as a whole grain rich food. So a 1/4 cup of canned, drained hominy credits as a 1/4 cup starchy vegetable, and a 1/2 cup cooked or 1 ounce dry hominy grits credits as 1 ounce equivalent grains. And then this policy memo also allowed for the crediting of corn masa, corn flour, and cornmeal, and these are credited as whole grain rich ingredients. Sponsors can credit these products in the same manner as all other creditable grain ingredients and foods, and it's determined by weight as listed in Exhibit A. Popcorn can also now be credited per SP 23/2019, and it is credited as a whole grain product. Popcorn is a great budget-friendly way to offer whole grains, and it can be popular with children, but we do recommend that operators just consider the developmental readiness of children and the ability of older or disabled adults to safely swallow the popcorn when deciding whether to offer it. So popcorn will be credited as 3/4 cup popped popcorn credits as a 1/2 ounce equivalent. 1.5 cups popped popcorn credits as a ½ ounce equivalent, and then 3 cups of popped popcorn credits as 1 ounce equivalent of whole grains. Popcorn can be used as an ingredient in creditable foods prepared commercially or by program operators. It must be present in the minimum creditable quantities to credit, so at least 3/4 cup or a 1/4 ounce equivalent must be served. To credit commercially prepared foods such as snack mix, popcorn cakes, rice cakes made from popcorn, or crackers made from ground popcorn, program operators need to obtain a product formulation statement. The product formulation statement would not be required if you were purchasing pre-popped popcorn or making a snack mix using a standardized recipe in which popcorn is an ingredient. Program operators should also ensure that any oil or fat that's used to pop the popcorn is included in the nutrient profile, as well as any toppings added. When popcorn is served, FNS encourages operators to limit the use of toppings such as salt, caramel, cheese, and butter that add sodium, sugar, or saturated fat. Operators should also use their discretion when determining whether popcorn would be perceived as a grain-based dessert. SP 24/2019 allowed the crediting of surimi in child nutrition programs. Surimi seafood is pasteurized, ready-to-eat, restructured seafood usually made from pollock. It is available in many forms and shapes, including chunks, shredded, and flaked, and it doesn't require additional preparation. Surimi could be incorporated into a variety of menu items, such as seafood salads, sushi-style rolls, sandwiches, tacos, and ramen. It credits as listed on the slide, and this information is also in the food buying guide. SP 25/2019 allowed for the crediting of Tempeh in child nutrition programs. Tempeh is a highly nutritious fermented soybean cake that's traditionally made with whole soybeans. It's used as a meat alternate in recipes including stir-fries, sandwiches, and salads. Program operators can credit 1 ounce of Tempeh as 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. This method of crediting applies to Tempeh with ingredients limited to soybeans, water, Tempeh culture, and for some varieties, vinegar, seasonings, and herbs. Varieties of Tempeh that include other creditable foods as ingredients such as brown rice, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, flaxseed, and other vegetables can also credit as meat alternates, grains, or vegetables. You would just need to obtain a child nutrition label or product formulation statement to determine the creditable quantities. And then finally, our last policy memo was SP 26/2019, and this allows for the crediting of pasta products made of vegetable flour. So pasta made of vegetable flours can now credit as a vegetable even if the pasta is not served with another recognizable vegetable. Whole vegetables cut into noodles or spirals, such as spiralized vegetables or sweet potatoes, have and will continue to credit towards the respective vegetable subgroups based on volume served. So consistent with normal vegetable crediting, a ½ cup of pasta made of 100% vegetable flour credits as a ½ cup of vegetables. Pasta products made of a blend of 100% vegetable flours from multiple vegetables subgroups may credit in 2 ways. So one, you could either obtain a product formulation statement detailing the actual volume of each vegetable per serving that the pasta product credits towards each specific vegetable subgroup, or if the actual volume of each vegetable flour is unknown, the pasta product may credit towards the additional vegetables needed from any vegetable subgroup to meet the overall weekly vegetable requirement. Pasta products made of vegetable flour and other non-vegetable ingredients can credit towards daily and weekly vegetable requirements with a product formulation statement detailing the actual volume of the vegetable flour per serving. This does not apply to grain-based pasta products that contain small amounts of vegetable powder for coloring, such as spinach powder or sun-dried tomato powder. This crediting doesn't change the does not remove the visual recognition requirement for legume pasta crediting towards the meat alternate component. So a half cup of cooked pasta made of 100% legume flour may credit as 2 ounce equivalents of meat alternate. To credit as a meat alternate, pasta made of legume flour must be offered with additional meat alternate, such as tofu, cheese, or meat. Legumes may credit as a vegetable or a meat alternate, but not as both at the same time. So to help children understand what foods are in their meals and snacks, program operators must indicate, using signs or other nutrition education, that pasta made of vegetable flour is a vegetable and not a grain component of the meal. So if you are serving a pasta made of chickpea flour, you could label that product chickpea pasta and provide a symbol showing that it's part of the vegetable component of the meal. Program operators also need to be trained to recognize a reimbursable meal. So you would want your cashier or your point of service monitor to know that that pasta is crediting as a vegetable and understand how it contributes towards your reimbursable meal. So now we're going to go through some scenarios based on this crediting pasta products with vegetable flours, just to determine if the product requires a product formulation statement. So looking at this product, we're going to go to the ingredients label to determine if it needs a PFS. So this product includes red lentil flour, white rice, and pea protein. So as we discussed earlier, if it were only the red lentil flour, then we would not need a product formulation statement. But because it has other non-vegetable ingredients, we're going to need that PFS to determine how this credits towards the vegetable component. So yes, a PFS is required. So now we'll look at our next one. We've got green pea rotini. Is a product formulation statement required? No, because the only ingredient is green pea flour. Therefore, we're going to credit this pasta for a half cup pasta equals a half cup vegetables under the starchy subgroup. Got our next one. The only ingredient is organic red lentil flour. So again, this product's not going to require a PFS because the only ingredient is red lentil flour. Therefore, it credits as a half cup pasta equals a half cup vegetable and under legumes, or we could credit it as a half cup pasta equals 2 ounces meat alternate, but we must serve that with another meat alternate in the meal. And now our final scenario. Our ingredients are red lentil flour and organic quinoa flour. So yes, this product would contain a vegetable flour, but we're going to need that product formulation statement because it has other non-vegetable ingredients, the quinoa flour. So the PFS is required to determine how it would credit towards the vegetable component. Now we've got another poll for you guys. So the question is 1.5 cups of popped popcorn credits as blank ounce equivalents of whole grains. All right, it looks like most of us got it right. The correct answer is a half ounce. So 1.5 cups credits as a half ounce, 3 cups credits as 1 ounce. Our next one is, in order to credit beef jerky in child nutrition programs, sponsors must blank. All right, and the correct answer is obtain a product formulation statement or CN label. And the reason we would need to do that is because the industry production standards for beef jerky, as you can imagine, vary quite a bit. So we would need a CN label or a product formulation statement to tell us how that's going to credit towards the meat component. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the food buying guide. USDA has updated the food buying guide, and it's now available online as an interactive resource. All users are able to use the interactive tool to easily search and navigate food yields and compare food yields. The interactive web-based tool takes all of the information that was previously contained in the printed and PDF versions of the food buying guide, including the introduction section, yield tables, meal pattern charts, reference table, and appendices, and puts it all into an interactive web tool with some additional enhanced features. And these include the ability to search for food groups and further narrow the search by food category, the capability to do a side-by-side comparison of the foods within the food categories. So you could compare diced canned carrots with diced fresh carrots to see which best fits your menu planning needs. And then you can create and save a favorites food list. Users that would like to continue having a print version of the resource can still download and print a PDF copy of the food buying guide yield information. So the food buying guide is the essential resource for food yield information for all child nutrition programs. Yield information helps operators know how much food to purchase and how that food will contribute to the meal pattern requirements. So Food and Nutrition Services has streamlined the process to access food yield information and enhance the functionalities of the food buying guide and brought it into the technology era. So the food buying guide is now digital, and they have a mobile app and a web-based interactive tool. So we touched on that interactive tool on the last slide, but they've also got a web app that has the same functionalities as that interactive tool. So in both of these tools, you can search and locate yield information for foods that you typically serve. You can compare your yield information to determine the foods that best meet your program needs. You can create a favorite foods list, and then you can email and print these search results, your comparisons, and your favorites list. So on this next slide, we've got a screenshot of what the entry into the food buying guide interactive web-based tool looks like, and that link is how you can get to the food buying guide. I also usually just Google USDA food buying guide, and it's one of the first links that pops up. So the interactive tool was their first resource that was made available to bring the food buying guide into the digital era, and it can be accessed again from that web address and then from the USDA Team Nutrition homepage. So please note that KSDE will no longer be maintaining our KSDE yield charts. Sponsors should use the food buying guide to determine yield information, and the reasoning for this is because the guide is continuously updated, and it makes it impossible for KSDE to keep the yield charts updated and current so that you guys have the most accurate information. All right, we're going to go to our next poll. And this one is, sponsors can keep using the KSDE yield charts, true or false? Okay, looks like we've got 100% answered correctly. The answer is false. And again, the reasoning for this is because the guide is continually updated, so it's nearly impossible to make sure you guys have the most accurate information in those yield charts. Okay, our next section is pricing adult meals. And there are two methods that sponsors should consider when they are pricing their adult meals. The price of adult meals should depend on whether a sponsor is a priced or a non-priced program. So this means, are you charging your students a price or are you not charging your students a price? So there are three guidelines for adult meal pricing. First, the price of the adult meal must be sufficient to cover the overall cost of the meal, including the value of cash in lieu of commodities used to prepare the meals. If cost data is not available, a sponsor would determine the cost of an adult meal based on if they are a pricing or non-pricing program. So if a pricing program, the school shall charge the price of the school's designated full price for students, so that full paid price plus the paid reimbursement rate. If you're a non-pricing program, you would charge the adult charge would be at least the amount of reimbursement received for a free student lunch plus the per meal value of cash in lieu. So those options are detailed on the slide. So again, the price charged for adult meals has to be sufficient to cover the overall cost of the meal, including the value of cash in lieu of commodities. If you don't have that cost data available, you're going to determine your adult meal price based on those two options regarding whether you're a pricing program or a non-pricing program. Moving on to another flexibility, SP 16/2019 provides additional flexibility in planning breakfast menus, but does not require sponsors to make any menu changes. So per SP 16/2019, sponsors participating in the school breakfast program can now credit any vegetable offered, including potatoes and other starchy vegetables, in place of fruit without including vegetables from other subgroups in the weekly menus. I want to emphasize that this flexibility is only effective through September 30th, 2019. So again, with this flexibility, sponsors are required to offer 1 cup of fruit daily to children in all age grade groups as part of the breakfast program. And to meet this requirement, schools can now offer a vegetable in place of a fruit. But again, this flexibility is only effective through September 30th of 2019. All right, our next section is food service revenue and expenditures. As you all know, each sponsor must establish a food service fund, and sponsors must maintain this food service fund to account for program income and expenses. One expense of your food service fund is going to be equipment. And equipment means any article of non-expendable personal property with a useful life of a year or longer, and an acquisition cost which equals or exceeds the federal per unit capitalization threshold of $5,000. Please remember that equipment purchases using food service funds must be used for the benefit of child nutrition programs. If the equipment will not be used solely for the benefit of child nutrition programs, then the equipment costs should be allocated accordingly to those other programs. KSDE does have a list of approved equipment that may be purchased following proper federal, state, and local purchasing procedures without submitting a request to KSDE for approval. And this list can be found in Chapter 13 of Food Service Facts on our Can-Eat website. Please note that cafeteria tables are not on this approved equipment list, and that would be because often the tables are used not solely for the benefit of child nutrition programs. So if you were wanting to purchase cafeteria tables, that would need to be submitted for approval by KSDE. If a sponsor chooses equipment that is not included on the approved list, they must submit a request for approval to KSDE's Director of Child Nutrition and Wellness prior to purchasing the item. If any equipment purchases are identified as unallowable during the administrative review, KSDE would disallow these purchases and implement its debt collection procedures. Moving on to maintenance of the nonprofit food service fund. To maintain the nonprofit status of your food service fund, the fund balance or net cash resources should not exceed 3 months' average expenditures. KSDE reviews the cash balance on the annual financial report. If the food service fund balance exceeds 3 months average expenditures, the sponsor must submit a plan to KSDE for reducing the fund balance. Since program funds may be used only for food service purposes, an excess balance may be reduced by improving the quality of food served, reducing the prices of reduced price meals served to students, or purchasing needed supplies, services, or equipment. Again, this plan must be submitted to KSDE and we will review and approve, and the plan must ensure that the balance will be reduced within a year. One form related to financial management is the Daily Income, Sales, and Deposits Report, often referred to as Form 10A. This form can be downloaded from our CANEAT website under Guidance, Food Service Facts, Chapter 10. And it's an Excel spreadsheet that, again, you'll download and you can complete it from your computer, and it automatically will total the columns for you. If a sponsor wishes to use an alternate form, it must be approved by KSDE prior to its use. The monthly annual financial report is another required document, and each monthly financial report should be completed within 90 days of the end of the claim month. The monthly data will roll up into the annual financial report, which must be completed by August 15th. Before August 15th, you must complete the end of the year balance of uncollected charges and then check the certification box in the annual financial report. There are lots of resources available to help sponsors complete these monthly and annual financial reports. We have a CAN-CLAIM quick reference guide that is posted in CAN-CLAIM, as well as a new online training tutorial. And this next slide will give you the link to our online training portal with details on how you can get to this monthly financial report tutorial, along with all of our other video tutorials. And because this is just a short tutorial, a certificate of completion is not issued for this training, this monthly financial report training. Within CAN-CLAIM, we have lots of financial management reports that can provide information that will assist you in financial management. So if you look at the top bar in CAN-CLAIM, and it's on this slide as well, there's an accounting tab. So you would click accounting and then financial management, and there's reports such as meal equivalents, total revenue, adult meal pricing, and lots of other helpful resources. Okay, we've got another poll. The first question is, what must be requested before purchasing equipment not on the Child Nutrition Program equipment list? Okay, we've got 100% selecting prior approval from KSDE, and that is correct. So before you purchase anything that's not on that approved equipment list, you must email Cheryl, the Director of Child Nutrition and Wellness. The annual financial report must be completed by which date? Okay, we've got 81% selected August 15th, and that is the correct answer. So your monthly financial reports should be completed within 90 days of the end of that month, and then those will roll up into your annual financial report, which is due August 15th. All right, so our next section covers labeling options for foods packaged on-site. In order to provide full disclosure on packaged items, the Kansas Food Code requires labeling of a packaged product if it's packaged on-site and presented to the customer in a self-serve style. Labeling food items that are packaged on-site protects the safety of individuals who must avoid certain food ingredients. The requirement to provide labeling information to a customer applies to any setting in which food is packaged on-site and offered to the customer in a self-serve style. So there are choices for meeting this labeling requirement. The term package refers to any product of 2 or more ingredients or components that has been put into a bottle, can, carton, bag, or secure wrapper by a food establishment before it's offered for self-service to the customer. So a single ingredient packaged food item such as an apple wrapped in a clear plastic wrap does not need a label posting because we can tell that it's an apple. But if this apple were wrapped in an opaque wrap, such as foil, we would need a label posting. So sites can choose to refrain from packaging the food item at all, choose to provide the required labeling information for the food item packaged on site, or choose to have a nutrition program staff person serve the food item packaged on site to the customer without labeling. A packaged product handed to the customer by a nutrition staff member would not need to include labeling information because the staff member is aware of the customers who have allergies and can monitor what the customer receives in the packaging. However, if it is offered in a self-serve model or handed to the customer by an individual unfamiliar with that child's dietary needs, then labeling information must be made available. So some labeling options for that food that's packaged on site. The Kansas Department of Agriculture has allowed lots of options for making this labeling information available. So you could provide an ingredient label on the packaged product. You could post a sign, a counter card, or a posting next to the product. A recipe for that item could be posted next to the product. The ingredient label from the shipping box could be displayed, or you could post a sign that indicates the ingredient information for the packaged product is available upon request. So this posting could simply state, labeling information is available upon request. And if the information is requested, then it must be made available in printed form so that the customer can identify the ingredients that could cause them harm. All right, so changing gears to our next section is frequent administrative review findings. So we're going to take a brief look at some of the most frequent review findings cited during the program year 2018 administrative review cycle. So on this first slide, we have our top 5 review findings. And again, this is for program year 2018. And the first one is quantities and meal pattern requirements are not met. The second one is violations of the Buy American provision. The third one is under certification and benefits. Applications were approved incorrectly. The fourth one is the HACCP plan was not implemented or documented. And the fifth one, assessment of revenue from non-program foods was not completed. And then our next slide has the bottom 5. So number 6 is meals selected by students do not contain all required components or quantities. Lack of signage explaining reimbursable meal near or at the beginning of the service line. Number 8 was the food safety plan was not available at each school. 9 was that the review of verified applications were not properly selected or verified correctly. And 10 was that temperature logs were unavailable. So I think this information just provides a helpful overview as you prepare for the upcoming program year, and possibly if you have an administrative review, just to note the top review findings and help you ensure you're operating within all program regulations. In our next section, we're going to cover family style meal service. So with school redesign, KSDE has received inquiries about utilizing family style meal service and how that would be implemented. So we'll cover an overview of that. As the name implies, family style meal service is a method of serving food to groups of students with adult supervision. Supervision is a key to the success of the family style meal service. Under the guidance of the adult, students are encouraged to try new foods, make selections that eliminate excessive waste, demonstrate appropriate behaviors, and share attention and conversation at the table. Some factors for consideration with family style meal service include expenses for extra serving dishes, utensils and additional dishware, possible increases in food costs, storage space to determine if it is adequate to hold additional serving pieces, training that must be conducted with teachers, staff, parents, and students on proper hand washing, food handling, and meal accountability, and establishing an ongoing food safety procedure. So we recommend checking out Chapter 22 of Food Service Facts for specific suggestions on keeping food safe when you're using that family style meal service. And if your school or district decides to proceed with offering family-style meal service, just feel free to reach out to KSDE or your area consultant for technical assistance, just to make sure that adequate meal accountability procedures are in place and developed. So offer versus serve is an option when using family-style meal service. And if the adult is serving the food, the student must be given the opportunity to decline menu items if you're using that offer versus serve program. But if you're using a serve program in family-style meal service, the students must be served all of the menu items. So in offer versus serve, under family-style meal service, each adult must understand the meal components of a reimbursable meal and the appropriate portion sizes for each component. It's the student's choice to decline the food, and students cannot be required to make certain selections. And Chapter 17 of Food Service Facts has good information concerning offer versus serve. The adult must assure that no student takes such a large portion of the food provided that others are unable to receive the minimum requirement for a reimbursable meal. The menu options should be clearly explained to the students each day, and then staff conducting the point of service accountability must obtain at least 4 hours of professional development training annually. Our next section is going to cover other programs offered beyond just the National School Lunch Program. So there's lots of opportunities for schools to feed children outside of the traditional school day. And we're going to talk about in this section the Child and Adult Care Food Program at-risk after-school meals, the National School Lunch Program after-school snack program, the Special Milk Program, and the Summer Food Service Program. So now that we've gotten to the end of the school year, you all probably know that kids seem to think that the school year drags on forever. But surprisingly, the typical 180-day school year represents just under half of all days in a year. So you can see in this slide, this is a nice diagram demonstrating how school days only represent 49% of all 365 days in a year, which is kind of surprising to me. So those non-traditional times, such as weekends during the school year and summer, your school breaks like winter and spring break, holidays and other non-school days like teacher in-service days make up more than 1/3 of the entire year. And child nutrition programs like school breakfast, school lunch, and after-school meals support kids with the food they need to learn and thrive during the school year. And summer meals can help them while school is out. So fortunately, we do have the programs that are able to serve children in need for 365 days of the year. One of these programs is the Child and Adult Care Food Program at-risk after-school meals. And this program operates after school, on weekends, and also possibly on holidays. And it provides a regularly scheduled, organized activity that is educational or enriching. These programs have to be located in a school attendance area where at least 50% of the enrolled children are certified for free or reduced price meals. And the reimbursement would be for up to 1 snack and 1 meal per child per day. And programs would receive the free rate of reimbursement for every meal or snack served because they're within that area eligible location. The next program we will discuss is the National School Lunch Program After School Snacks. And this program has to be sponsored or operated by a school district. And the after-school care program has to provide organized, regularly scheduled activities in a structured and supervised environment. And this program would receive reimbursement for 1 snack per child per regularly scheduled school day. And in the after-school snack program, a program would receive the free rate for all snacks served if the school is in an attendance area where at least 50% of the enrolled children are eligible for free and reduced price meals. And if not in one of those area eligible locations, the site would receive the free, reduced price, or paid rate depending on each child's family income for programs. So a frequently asked question for the National School Lunch Program is, can a school offer a National School Lunch Program after-school snack at a non-school facility? And the answer is yes, as long as the school is providing the snack and sponsoring the meal service. Eligibility can be by site if the site has at least 50% of enrolled children qualified for free or reduced price meals, or the school can receive reimbursement depending on each child's household income. Our next program we'll discuss is the Summer Food Service Program. And if any of you are summer sponsors, you know that we are gearing up for that right now. As you can see on the slide, there are 3 types of sites in the Summer Food Service Program. We have open sites, which are located in low-income areas, and these sites receive free reimbursement, the free reimbursement rate for all children. There's enrolled sites, and these sites only serve the children enrolled in that program. And then there are campsites, and these sites are only reimbursed for serving free meals and snacks to kids that are individually eligible for free and reduced price meals. And in the Summer Food Service Program, you would receive reimbursement for up to 2 meals or 1 meal and 1 snack per child per day. And on that same note, all sponsors must provide information to families on the availability and location of free meals for students when the regular school year ends. So this means that regardless of whether or not you are a summer sponsor, you must advertise the program. So this can be done by posting KSDE's Locate a Site Near You page, and you could post this on your district website. You could include it on flyers that are sent home with children at the end of the school year. And to get that link, you can go to the breadcrumbs on the slide. Another required outreach is the school breakfast program outreach. And in an effort to help more children benefit from the nutritious meals served in the school breakfast program, schools participating in the school breakfast program must inform families of the availability of breakfast. A notification of the availability must be relayed just prior to or at the beginning of the school year in the informational packets that are sent to each household with free and reduced price meal applications for the next school year. In addition, schools should send reminders regarding the availability of the school breakfast program multiple times throughout the school year. Schools can provide these reminders through their public address systems in the schools or through means normally used to communicate with the households. So, for example, information about the school breakfast program could be posted on the school district's website and updated throughout the school year. Some of you may know that innovative breakfast delivery models are becoming very popular, and traditional school breakfast programs often have barriers that may prohibit students from eating breakfast before school, and these innovative models remove these barriers. So some of the examples that are being implemented right now are breakfast in the classroom. So with breakfast in the classroom, students eat breakfast in their classroom after the official start of the school day, and students or staff will deliver the breakfast to the classroom via coolers or insulated rolling bags. The students would eat the breakfast during the first 10 to 15 minutes of class while the teacher is taking attendance, collecting homework, or making announcements. Grab-and-go breakfast is another option, and with this one, students would pick up conveniently packaged breakfasts from mobile service carts in high traffic areas that are convenient for them, such as hallways, entryways, or cafeterias. And then the students could eat these in their classroom or other common areas before or after the bell has rung. Second chance breakfast is when students eat breakfast during a break in the morning, often between first and second period, or midway between breakfast and lunch. And schools can serve breakfast in the same manner as they would with traditional grab and go or in the classroom, or they can open up their cafeterias to serve breakfast during the break. And second chance breakfast is particularly effective in secondary schools. And then finally, we have universal free breakfast, and this is when breakfast is offered to all students at no cost. Schools continue to claim the federal reimbursement in the correct category for each student participating, and this option can be helpful, a helpful addition to any breakfast model because it removes the financial barrier that students might face when participating in the breakfast program. Now we're going to cover the special milk program, and schools that participate in the National School Lunch Program and Breakfast Program may claim milk served to half-day kindergarten or pre-K students only if these students do not have access to the National School Lunch Program or School Breakfast Program. Schools that do not participate in the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program may claim all milk consumed by students under the Special Milk Program. So on the next slide, we have a frequently asked question for Special Milk Program. And this question asks, when the morning kindergarten class is offered breakfast and the afternoon kindergarten class does not have lunch available to them, can the sponsor participate in the Special Milk Program for the afternoon kindergarten class only? And the answer is yes. Only the milk served to the afternoon class would be able to be claimed for reimbursement because they have no other program available to them. The sponsor would just need to take into consideration that the milk served to the morning kindergarten class would not have the reimbursement subsidy. And the sponsor would decide whether or not to charge the morning students the higher price for the milk or pay for that milk from other non-federal sources. And in the Special Milk Program, we have 3 different pricing options. So in this slide, you can see the 3 pricing options. The first one is paid, and this is where milk is served to all participating children for the same established price, regardless of their eligibility status, and then the sponsor would claim those milks all at the paid rate. The second one is paid and free, and this allows the sponsor to offer milk at no charge to students that qualify for free benefits, and then charge all other participating students at an established price. And then the sponsor would claim these at both the free and the paid rates. And then finally, we have non-pricing programs, and the sponsor provides milk at no charge to all students and then claims all these milks served at the paid rate. And then other sponsor funds would be used to cover the remaining costs of providing that milk. So now we have another poll. This one is related to breakfast. So this one asks, schools can increase breakfast participation by which of these options? All right, it looks like 91% have answered the very last one, which is B and C, and that would be correct. So you can increase your breakfast participation by promoting the school breakfast program and also offering breakfast via innovative breakfast delivery models. So as you all know, sponsors must use proper procurement practices to ensure free and open competition. And you may also know that per SP 20-2019, the thresholds under federal financial assistance awards have increased. And these increases are that the federal micro-purchase threshold has increased from $3,500 to $10,000. The federal simplified acquisition threshold has increased from $150,000 to $250,000. And in Kansas, the small purchase threshold for non-food items, including equipment, remains at that $20,000 per state statute. State and local agencies can set lower micro-purchase and simplified acquisition thresholds and thereby impose more restrictive procurement procedures if they wish. So moving on to purchasing, All purchases must allow for open and free competition among vendors. No vendor may be selected based on geographic location, with the exception of locally grown foods, and the Buy American requirement must be followed by all sponsors. Cost plus a percentage of cost purchases are not allowable, and sponsors must use formal purchase procedures for contracts that are greater than $20,000 for non-food items and greater than $250,000 for food. Please note that it is allowable to give geographic preference to local farmers that sell produce or other farm products to the school. And we'll cover that farm to plate info here in a little bit. So KSDE has developed a vended meal contract prototype that can be used by program operators. And this template is available on your Can Claim Checklist tab, and I think it's also on our website. We no longer have a procedural or sponsor-to-sponsor contract template to be used. So this vended meal contract will be used for all situations where you are purchasing a meal from another entity. So a common question is, why is a procurement plan required? And a procurement plan or policy can be valuable for two reasons. One, it can serve to clarify the purchasing practices of an organization for the benefit of everyone involved. And two, it can guide your employees on how to use the appropriate method of purchasing for each category of items. So it's kind of an instructional handout for all of your employees on how to proceed with each type of procurement. And it's also a federal law as listed on the slide per CFR 200-318. And a procurement plan along with a written standard of conduct is required. And the procurement plan provides justification for using a certain purchasing method to obtain an item. And the scope of the plan is determined by the organization of the sponsor. You must review your procurement plan annually and update and upload it with the sponsor's code of conduct as part of your program renewal. And we have a sample procurement plan prototype, which includes a written standard of conduct, and it's available in Chapter 13 of Food Service Facts, and then also can be downloaded on your Can Claim Checklist tab. And the updates include more information about Buy American and how to document justifications for exceptions. And speaking of Buy American, I'm going to pass it on to Rachel now. She's going to cover the rest of this procurement section and the rest of the training.
Hello everyone, this is Rachel, and as Holly said, we're going to move right along and start talking about Buy American. So the Buy American provision requires that school food authorities purchase to the maximum extent practical domestic commodities or products. Buy American supports the mission of child nutrition programs, which is to serve children nutritious meals and support American agriculture. There are limited exceptions to purchase non-domestic foods, and so I really want to emphasize limited because to the maximum extent practicable, we want to purchase Buy American compliant goods. Those limited exceptions include when the food or food product is not produced or manufactured in the U.S. in sufficient and reasonably available quantities of satisfactory quality, or when competitive bids reveal the cost of a U.S. product are significantly higher than the non-domestic product. When it comes to domestic commodity, the National School Lunch Act defines domestic commodity as a product, as an agricultural commodity that is produced in the United States and a food product that is processed in the United States using substantial agricultural commodities that are produced in the United States. What does substantial mean? Substantial means that over 51% of the final processed product consists of agricultural commodities that were grown domestically. So, moving on, when the nonprofit food service funds are used, procurement transaction for food products must comply with Buy American, whether they are purchased by you as the sponsor using your food service funds or by entities that are purchasing on your behalf, such as a food service management company or a group purchasing cooperative. Buy American provision solicitation information should be included in all product specifications, bid solicitations, requests for proposals, contracts, purchase orders, and other procurement documents. It is your responsibility as the sponsor to notify who you're purchasing from that you are participate in child nutrition programs in the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program and must comply with the Buy American provision. You also must monitor your contractor performance to ensure compliance with Buy American. Even though you requested in your solicitations, sometimes vendors will substitute products that aren't compliant. So it is your responsibility to monitor that performance to ensure that they are being compliant. When it comes to Buy American, there are some cost-saving tips that can help. Some ways to make sure that we're not only compliant with Buy American, but also saving on our menu costs would be to plan menus to take advantage of seasonal foods that are available from local sources. Use your cycle menus to forecast food quantities well in advance of need so that you can provide a reasonable estimate of the food quantities that you will need to give food producers and your suppliers sufficient time to produce, process, and manufacture the foods in quantities that are required across the nation. This next slide really does emphasize again that it's the sponsor's responsibility, not the producers or vendors. I see a lot of times out in the field that your vendor provides a letter on Buy American, but that's not sufficient. It is your responsibility to request and solicit that products are compliant with the Buy American provision. You cannot automatically substitute items, nor can industry automatically substitute items. You should look at your menu and determine if the substitution is needed or if another domestic product can be used as a substitution. Maybe you can substitute apples for those pears that you can't get at this time. Look at what you can do. If a sponsor wants to replace a product with a non-domestic product, the domestic products must not be available or be cost prohibitive. And you must also document your reasoning for the substitution. You can't just automatically say that I can't get mandarin oranges in the United States, so I'm going to use them anyway. You have to have that documentation justifying why you are using this product and how you are limiting the use overall. It is also considered a best industry practice to create documentation for each item that they want to sell to you as the sponsors, certifying their domestic origin. So, what can you do to comply with the requirement of the Buy American provision? Include language such as what's on the bottom of the screen there in your solicitation and contracts. Look at your procurement procedures to ensure that it is the Buy American is in your procurement practices. You should also retain records documenting any exceptions. Require certifications from your vendors that the products are 51%, and monitor your contractor performance. Make sure that they are giving you the products that you requested. If you requested everything be compliant with Buy American, make sure they aren't giving you cucumbers from Mexico or another country in that regards. It is very important that we monitor that. So there's some sample language at the bottom of the slide that you can put in a letter and send to all vendors that you plan to work with to make sure that they know that you need to comply with the Buy American provision. What documentation is required for sponsors to justify the use of an exemption to Buy American? You can also include this in your language that you send to your vendor, and it's definitely a best practice to include this. When you want to make an exception, you should make sure that the request is submitted in writing to a designated official, a minimum of however many days you feel is necessary in advance of delivery. That request, so if the sponsor or if your vendor wants to substitute something that's not compliant with Buy American, the request should include the alternative substitutes that are domestic and meet the required specification, or the price of the domestic food alternative substitute, and the availability of the domestic alternative substitute in relation to the quantity that you ordered. The reason for exception should be documented, such as the limited or lack of availability of or price. So price of the domestic food product and price of the non-domestic product that meets the required specification of the domestic product. I really want to emphasize here that this has to be specific. It can't just be in general, this product costs 15% more domestically. It must be a specific product, that this domestic product costs X amount and the non-domestic product costs X amount. The Agricultural Marketing Service also provides free, unbiased price and sales information on farm commodities that's available at https://marketnews.usda.gov. You can use that website to find third-party verification of costs and availability of domestic and non-domestic foods. So that is a fantastic resource. In addition, on this next slide, we have some sample language that contractors can use to certify domestic food. So this could be something that they put, that we certify that this product was produced and processed in the U.S. and contains over 51% of its agricultural food component by weight or volume. So there is space for the supplier to fill in the name of the commodity and ensuring that it contains over 51%. Now I think we have a few more poll questions here that will get pulled up. Sponsors of the National School Lunch Program / School Breakfast Program must comply with Buy American provisions. Is this true, false, or only if you want to? It looks like most everyone got the answer correct with true, 100%. You must comply with Buy American provisions. Next question. Prime vendor is a purchasing method of child nutrition programs. Is this true or false? Okay, so this one most everybody answered as true, but that is not the correct answer. Prime vendor is not a purchasing method. The purchasing methods are micro purchase, the small purchase, and then the formal purchase procedure. So prime vendor is not a purchasing method. You can procure and end up using bottom line pricing to get a more central vendor that you use, but prime vendor itself is not a purchasing method. So we want to make that clear. The next question, the federal simplified acquisition threshold or small purchase threshold for food in Kansas is increased to... Okay, so 89%, or 91%, sorry, have gotten the answer correct. The small purchase or federal simplified acquisition threshold is $250,000. So that is the amount that if you go over that for food purchases only, you would need to follow formal procurement procedures. If you go over $20,000 for non-food purchases, you would also need to follow that formal procurement procedures. Okay, so they should be on your screen, or if not, they should be there really shortly here. With Farm to Plate, the aim or the goal is to get more local products into child nutrition programs. In Kansas, Farm to Plate encompasses all child nutrition programs. So that's the school nutrition program, the child and adult care food program, the summer food service program, and the fresh fruit and vegetable program. Not only can local foods cover the entire plate, but they can also be offered throughout the entire year in any child nutrition program. We do have a new challenge when it comes to Farm to Plate called the Farm Fresh Fridays Challenge. In this, KSDE is challenging sponsors to make a pledge to offer a reimbursable meal with at least 2 local foods at least one Friday per month through June 30th of 2020. With this, we understand that Friday may not work for everyone, so if you would like to do a different day than Friday, maybe you don't have school on Fridays, then that is acceptable. You just must consider the entire plate when sourcing local foods and then sign up for that challenge using the link on the slide. I think we should be able to get that copied into the chat box for you here so that you can have that available. Farm to Plate director is Barb Depew in the Topeka office. She is a great resource if you have any questions at all on that particular challenge. With the Farm Fresh Friday challenge, there's also been several Farm to Plate resources that have been developed. We have fact sheets that KSDE has worked with various commodity groups, including, so we're featuring on these fact sheets beef, pork, dairy, vegetables, soy, fruits, wheat, and corn. There's also a Farm Fresh Fridays guide and an updated local food sourcing guide. With this, we also feature success stories in the monthly update for Farm to Plate, so it'd be a great way to kind of showcase what you are doing with Farm to Plate. And again, if you are having any questions at all or have need some assistance with sourcing local foods, please contact Barb Depew at the email listed on the slide there. Farm to Plate product purchases require the same documentation as any food purchases. So that's a question that we get a lot, is what do we need to have on file? We still have to allow for open and fair competition, and a vendor letter should be kept on file for local products purchased for child nutrition programs. If a product is donated, a document must show the source of the product that was donated, the date it was received, and the estimated value of the product. We also have some HACCP resources available, such as standard operating procedures, receiving log, storage and service temperatures, or time as public health controls that must be maintained. These records are found on our Can Eat website under Farm to School Guidance. Another challenge that we have that's pretty exciting is the Team Up for Local Foods Recipe Challenge. This is a collaborative effort in the Kansas State Department of Education to seek local food recipes created by school teams consisting of students, a family and consumer science educator, a school nutrition professional, and a local producer. The recipe created can be served as part of a reimbursable school meal and meets the nutrition standards for school meals. So that's pretty awesome. Serving local foods through the school meal programs is a central component of Kansas Farm to Plate initiatives. Local can mean a lot of things. So it can mean foods that are grown in a school garden, donated, or purchased from a local producer or vendor. The team with the winning recipe will receive a banner to display at a school, chef coats for the student members, and training grants to attend classes at a Child Nutrition Management Academy. All qualifying submissions will be shared in a Team Up for Local Foods recipe resource. So we hope that you may consider taking the challenge there. Next, we have another poll question here. So Farm to Plate does what? The correct answer is all of the above. Farm to Plate educates children about where their food comes from, boosts the local economy, and also increases local foods on the plates of child nutrition programs. So, just as a friendly reminder, financial management is an important component of all child nutrition programs. The state fiscal year end has some implications for the claims deadline. So April and May claims are due Monday, June 17th by the close of business. Any claims that are submitted after that will not be paid until July and also will not receive the state of Kansas match, which is an additional 4 cents per lunch beyond the federal reimbursement. So make sure that you get those claims entered by June 17th if you want that match. If not, your money will be delayed slightly because it won't be paid until July. It's also important to remember to make transfers to the Food Service Fund for free adult meals or low paid meal price before the end of the state fiscal year, which is June 30th. Sponsors must have a written policy on meal charges. This must also be provided in writing to all households at the start of each school year and to families that transfer into the district and school throughout the year. This policy must also be communicated to all district, school, and staff responsible for enforcing any aspect of the policy. This is really important that everyone is on the same page so that everyone knows what's going to happen when a student's meal account no longer has enough money to cover the price of the meal. This also ensures that all students without enough money to pay for their meals are treated the same across the school district, regardless of what school they attend. So it's really important that we have that policy and that everyone understands this policy, that it's communicated to everyone involved, food service professionals, staff, teachers, students, etc. Best practices for preventing or reducing school meal debt would be to make sure that we certify every eligible student for free or reduced price school meals. We try and reach as many people as possible, but sometimes we hit those families that aren't able to pay and they struggle with that. So if we can certify them for free or reduced price benefits, we can hopefully reduce our school meal debt. Implement policies to minimize the debt overall. Make sure that you're following that you're getting on top of it, and respond quickly when students do accrue debt. It's really important that we don't let it get out of hand so that we can hopefully have that policy in place to address those overall. Bad debt is delinquent debt determined to be uncollectible or too costly to collect. Federal regulations state that bad debts from uncollectible amounts and other claims are unallowable. Related collection costs and legal expenses for bad debts are also unallowable. This means that the food service account cannot just absorb the cost of bad debt, as bad debt is not an allowable expense. So you as a sponsor must determine when the delinquent debt is uncollectible and becomes defined as bad debt. When that happens, you must transfer funds for that bad debt into the food service account from non-federal sources, and then assume the cost of ongoing collection and legal fees from non-food service funds, and maintain records related to that bad debt. So that's just something that we wanted to get out there for everyone to know. What non-federal funding sources may be used to restore operating losses from bad debts. If a revenue source is funded through the food service account, then all revenue from the source must be returned to the food service account and may not be used to cover operating losses resulting from bad debt. So, if a sponsor wanted to cover the cost of bad debts through fundraising efforts from adult meals, catering, or a la carte sales, the foods and labor costs for that fundraising would be accounted for separately from the food service account receiving federal reimbursement. Therefore, you could also use the school's district general fund, special funding from state or local governments, or any other non-federal sources, as long as we aren't using that food service fund to generate that revenue. Some important reminders: claims are due within 60 days. This is not always the last day of the month. It's really important to remember that come March, your March claim isn't going to be due May 31st. It's going to be due May 30th. So it's not always the last day of the month. It's within 60 days of that end of that month. Claims must be in approved status, not pending submission by the 60-day deadline. So make sure when you submit that claim, you don't forget to go back into that sponsor claim and certify and save the claim. Make sure that it says approved status before you move on to your next task. Make sure that that is approved status, not pending submission. Catering income is not a transfer, but rather it's reported as income on Form 10A. Transfers may be required for low-paid student meal prices, and be sure that you report grant awards on the monthly financial report under income as a federal grants line 8 and non-reimbursable sales and charges line 34. Okay, poll: March claims are due no later than May 31st. True or false? I was going to say that one should be a fairly easy one because I actually used that specific example. And it looks like most of you were paying attention. The correct answer is false. The on-site review of accountability procedures is required for sponsors with more than one serving site. So if you serve at an elementary school and at a high school, at two separate buildings, you must, or two separate sites, two separate kitchens, you must complete the on-site review of accountability procedures. This allows you as the sponsor to identify and correct problems in meal accountability. It verifies the approved accountability system is being used correctly, and it should be completed by someone not involved in daily accountability procedures. You can use Form 9G to complete this review, and it must be completed by February 1st and kept on file for review or audit. This doesn't mean that you have to wait until January 31st to complete the review. Go ahead and get it done in plenty of time because it can be completed any time before February 1. You must review all of your lunch sites and at least half of your breakfast sites. If you have a food service management company, there are some additional requirements. You must complete the food service management company monitoring form, which is 14A, at least 2 times each school year. The first monitoring form should be completed by December 1, and the second monitoring by April 1. You also must complete the on-site accountability review Form 9G that we talked about on the previous slide. So do not forget that. So civil rights, this is the required civil rights training that we at KSDE give you every year. The purpose of civil rights is to inform, train, and educate child nutrition program staff regarding USDA civil rights requirements and also increase awareness of resources and information available to assist in carrying out civil rights responsibilities. We still use FNS Instruction 113-1 as our guidance document on this. What are civil rights? Civil rights are non-political rights of a citizen. These are guaranteed to United States citizens by the 13th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution and Acts of Congress. Child nutrition programs have always been available to all participants on an equal opportunity basis. Next, we ask, what is discrimination? Discrimination is the act of distinguishing one person or group of persons either intentionally, by neglect, or by the effect of actions or lack of actions. All participants must be treated equal with respect and dignity. USDA for child nutrition programs has 6 federally protected classes. These include race, color, national origin, sex, age, and disability. This means that services are available and that child nutrition program meals and snacks are served to all eligible participants regardless of those 6 protected classes. Public notification. All programs need to inform parents or guardians as well as local minority organizations about program benefits, eligibility requirements, program services, the location, as well as the hours of operation. So you must have a policy on non-discrimination and also develop a procedure for filing a complaint. In addition, materials must be provided in the appropriate translation as necessary, and you must display the And Justice for All poster. The And Justice for All poster is shown here on this slide. The correct one, or the newest version, is the green version. If you have a red and blue version, you should take that down and make sure you get the green version. For those of you that also participate in the Child and Adult Care Food Program, you must also have the Building for the Future poster displayed. So make sure that you keep that in mind. The non-discrimination statement should be on all printed materials when referring to the provision of child nutrition programs. This includes letters to households, enrollment forms, the notification of eligibility or denial of reduced price or free benefits, employee handbooks, newsletters, brochure, print or broadcast ad flyers, websites, etc. The wording must be exact as what's displayed on the screen there and cannot be changed in any way. If your document is 1 page or less, you can use a shorter non-discrimination statement. That correct shortened statement is this institution is an equal opportunity provider. This can be used again only if the printed materials are 1 page or less. 1 page is defined as front and back. It's also really important that we remember to convey the message of equal opportunity in all photographs and other graphics that are used to provide program or program-related information. Remember that as you are preparing information. Racial and ethnic data must be collected on an annual basis. You must have a system to identify program participants in accordance with regulations. This data must be collected on participants at all sites annually. You can use visual identification to determine a participant's racial and ethnic category as necessary. You must keep this data on file for 3 years plus the current year. And this is used to determine how effectively the program is reaching potentially eligible children and if additional outreach is needed. It is also a requirement that you have resources available for limited English proficiency households. You must take reasonable steps to ensure meaningful access to program materials, such as translated meal applications and also the availability of an interpreter. You have to have that availability. USDA has many translations available for the application. We at KSDE have the Spanish version available on our website. When it comes to diet modification, a meal modification form or statement signed by a medical authority is necessary if it cannot be made within the meal pattern. Modifications for non-disabled participants is permitted, but it's not required. You must also think about accessibility to the cafeteria and meal choices, making sure that disabled students can get to all meal lines, all meal choices, and have the same access as everyone else. We want to convey equal opportunity to everyone regardless of accessibility. Complaints of discrimination must be based on USDA protected classes listed there on the slide. So a person can allege that discrimination has occurred and file a discrimination complaint because they feel they were denied benefits or received delayed benefits or received benefits in a dissimilar manner due to being a member of one or more of the protected classes. If you are found to be in non-compliance, that there is factual finding that any civil rights requirement is not being adhered to, there are no minor or major categories when it comes to non-compliance. No matter the level or severity, non-compliance has to be reported. Some examples of non-compliance include denying an individual the opportunity to apply for program benefits or services, providing program services or benefits in a dissimilar manner, or selecting sites or facilities in a manner that denies an individual access. So for instance, if you decide to serve breakfast in suburban school locations only, but not have schools located in areas with high proportion of minorities, that would be an example of non-compliance in 3 protected classes of race, color, and national origin. Procedures for filing complaints, they can be filed directly with USDA by completing the corresponding complaint form, either verbally or in writing. USDA complaint forms should be completed by the complainant if they would like to. You cannot require them to make the complaint on the form. You can fill out the form when you receive the complaint. The second acceptable procedure for handling complaints would be for the institution to complete the complaint form, or the person making the complaint complete the complaint form and forward it on to KSDE. We will then forward that complaint form on to USDA Mountain Plains Regional Office. Again, we just want to stress that an individual cannot be required to complete the complaint form. However, it is helpful in collecting all of the information that is necessary, which is available on this next slide. We must take the name, address, and phone number, the location and name of the sponsor delivering the service, the nature of the incident or action, the basis on which discrimination exists, the date during which the actions occurred, and any names, phone numbers of persons who may have knowledge of the action that you can confirm that this discrimination may have occurred. All complaints must be filed within 180 days. This could be written or verbal. Complaints can also be made anonymously. You must collect the information and use the complaint form if you are writing it down for the person making the complaint. It's really helpful to use that to get all of the necessary information forwarded on to the proper agencies. Upon discovery of noncompliance, institutions are required to take corrective action immediately to achieve voluntary compliance within 60 days. If we cannot get that voluntary compliance in that time frame, the regional office will be involved to help resolve those issues. One way that we can kind of help avoid civil rights complaints or complaints in general is to keep customer service principles in mind. Participants should be treated in the same manner, same menu items in the same amounts. You can't just give boys more food because they're growing more, that they need it more than girls. We have to treat everyone the same. Include all participants in meals, snack, activities, etc. Include positive comments as well as constructive education, and make sure that standards of behavior are not based on membership in a protected class. You can also use some conflict resolution techniques such as the LOVE that is listed on the slide. This can be listening to the person, use reflective listening and really actually take in what they're saying. Open-ended questions, ask what's going on, validate the person's concern, and then empower, emphasize, and educate. In summary, do not deter people from receiving benefits of government programs. Make sure that we provide equal treatment for all, and ensure that all applicants understand their rights and responsibility. Show respect and dignity for all. These are the goals of the civil rights, is to eliminate barriers and prevent or deter people from feeling discriminated against. Annual civil rights training is required for frontline staff. Some frontline staff are those that are directly involved in the interaction with kids and those who supervise those individuals. We have several resources available, including in Chapter 5 of Food Service Facts. You can read that entire chapter. We also have a quick guide to civil rights annual frontline staff training. It's a quick little one page that's quick to read. We have a civil rights tutorial that you can show. It's a video, and sponsor civil rights training will need to be monitored at program renewal. So you must upload a signed document of civil rights training and can claim annually. You must show that those individuals signed off that they had the training. Online civil rights training is available on our learning platform as shown on the slide. It is a 30-minute online training with quiz with civil rights compliance and child nutrition programs, and you will receive a certificate upon completion as long as you pass the 80% on the quiz that is required. The USDA non-discrimination statement is always available on our CANEAT website as a quick link over there on the right-hand side. You can just simply click on that there from wherever you are on the website, and it'll take you to the correct non-discrimination statement. Okay, moving on to meal modifications within school meal programs. This next little chart is really handy, and I just really think that has made modifications simple. So if somebody comes to you and they have a request for a meal modification, the first question you should ask yourself is, can the meal modification be made within the program meal pattern? If this is yes, then you simply work with the child, parent, and any other staff to determine which menu items can be safely selected by the child to obtain a reimbursable meal. Or you can provide a reasonable substitution for foods that must be omitted, allowing the child to select a reimbursable meal. If the meal modification cannot be made within the program meal pattern, the answer to that question is no, then you must ask the parent and guardian to provide a medical statement signed by a licensed medical authority. Then, at that point, you would provide reasonable accommodations that meet the requirements that were outlined on that medical statement, which we'll kind of get into a little bit more here. We do have in Chapter 19 of Food Service Facts a prototype form that can be used to collect the information from the medical professional. It's not required that they use this form, but if they choose not to use this form, make sure that the medical statement includes information about the child's physical or mental impairment that's in sufficient detail to know what what you need to do to restrict the child's diet, an explanation of what must be done to accommodate the child, and the food or foods to be omitted and recommended alternatives if that is appropriate. The medical statement's no longer required to identify the specific disability or use the terms disability or disabled. So if the meal modification can be made within the meal pattern, then we can modify meals that meet the program meal pattern requirements. Make sure that those are eligible for reimbursement, regardless of whether the school obtains a medical statement. USDA does not require a medical statement signed by a licensed medical authority for meal modifications within the meal program or meal pattern. For example, if a child was allergic to strawberries, you could simply substitute pineapple or another fruit or vegetable for that child within the program meal pattern. That is okay. Just be sure that you go ahead and document the conversation that you had with the parents and document everything that's going on through that so that you have items that you can back up. Procedural safeguard process as codified at 7 CFR 15B requires you to provide notice and information to parents and guardians regarding how to request a reasonable modification along with their procedural rights, which include the right to file a grievance if they believe a violation has occurred regarding the request for a reasonable modification. They have the right to receive a prompt and equitable resolution of the grievance. They have the right to request and participate in an impartial hearing to resolve their grievance. They have the right to be represented by counsel at the hearing, examine the record, and also receive notice of the final decision and a procedure for review or an avenue for an appeal process. It's important that you develop procedures for parents and guardians to request reasonable modifications. Make sure that you're training school and food service staff on reasonable modification procedures and the legal requirements of that. You should also appoint a 504 coordinator to ensure compliance. This is someone that is kind of in charge, making sure that those kiddos are getting what they need. It's also a good idea to assemble a team to implement guidelines and render decisions on modification requests so that we can keep everyone on the same page, we treat everyone the same, and that everyone is on the same page. Sometimes kiddos are being served food outside of the cafeteria, so you might want to pull in a teacher or school nurse so that everyone knows what that child needs to be safe in school. If you would like to learn more about meal modifications, we do have an online class available on our learning platform at learning.ksde.org. When it comes to food and lifestyle preferences, you can make those modifications within the meal pattern as long as they're still a reimbursable meal. When a modification is made within the meal pattern, you're not required to obtain a medical statement. Meal modifications to accommodate a food preference for religious, ethnic, moral, or other reasons may be reimbursed as long as they adhere to standards found in program regulations. So make sure it's a reimbursable meal. If it's outside of that, you're going to need to get that medical statement. When it comes to cow's milk, meal modifications to request to omit cow's milk can be accommodated within program meal pattern in an offer versus serve program by allowing students to select other items from the menu to obtain a reimbursable meal. So you can ask the child to select from the other items and still have a reimbursable meal. In a serve program, a non-dairy beverage that meets USDA substitution criteria may be substituted for cow's milk to accommodate a meal modification request. We ask that you double check to make sure that it is nutritionally equivalent to milk, that it's on that, it meets those substitution criteria in order to provide the same nutrients that is planned out with milk. A meal modification request for a milk substitute that does not meet this criteria is required to be maintained if it doesn't meet this criteria. So this is a chart that's available in Chapter 19 of Food Service Facts. The only milk substitutions that are allowed are lactose-free milk and then non-dairy beverages that are nutritionally equivalent to fluid milk. I recommend that you print this chart off and you take it to the store with you, or take it when you're looking online and physically compare the label of the milk that you want to purchase to this label. The 1 cup serving has to meet the minimum amounts that are in this chart. There's several milks out there that do not meet this, such as almond milk, rice milk, etc. It's important that you double check and make sure that the milk that you are providing meets the substitution criteria. And if it does not, you'll need to purchase a milk that does, or obtain a medical statement for that specific milk that they are wanting to request. Moving on to confidentiality in child nutrition programs. So ensure that the child's eligibility is not disclosed at any point. This could be intentional, but a lot of times this happens unintentionally. Make sure that when they're notified of the availability of free and reduced meals, that you're not identifying individuals. They have to be, place it to where everyone comes through the line, that you're not singling out people. When your certification and notification of eligibility, make sure that we're not disclosing information. When we're providing meals in the cafeteria, make sure that we are not having all of the free and reduced kids go to one line and everybody else go to another line, or something along those lines. At the point of service is where I see this a lot. The screen may show what the meal charge is, or that the student is free or reduced, and it's unintentional. You may not think that the students are looking at that, but we don't want to disclose that eligibility at any point. Also with the method of payment, maybe you have people that can only pay cash versus paying online. That can be a point where the eligibility is accidentally disclosed. In the slide here, we have a best practice from the Shawnee Mission School District, where they show the reimbursable meal by blocking their computer screens. This slide here is from the McPherson School District. It has some screensavers that are out there that make it nearly impossible, unless you're directly behind the computer, to see what's on the screen. So that is fantastic there. Consent for disclosures are required for all programs that you want to give free and reduced information out for that require parental consent. So if you are doing free textbook fees or waived athletic fees, something like that, you can't just automatically give that information out. The parent has to give consent. On this consent for disclosure, the check boxes cannot be pre-checked, so the family must be able to identify which program specifically they want to provide information for. You cannot just list all of your programs on one line. Each program has to be listed separately. And then the parent also has to be able to designate which child they want to provide consent for. If a child's name is not on this list, then you cannot provide those benefits to that child. It's really important that you take this and you use it and allow what the parents give consent for only, not anything extra. Requests for information on eligibility for child nutrition program benefits should be filled out. This is Form 6A, so it's available in Chapter 6 of Food Service Facts. So this should be filled out for anyone before they receive the free and reduced price information. This includes any school staff that have a need to know of the eligibility information, such as school secretaries or IT staff that upload. So be sure that you have these on file. Moving on to determining eligibility. We at KSDE have several resources available out there. So before you start determining eligibility, be sure to review the most recent version of Food Service Facts, Chapter 7, that's available on our CANE website. Be sure to look at the resources guidelines for determining eligibility for child nutrition program benefits and the 2019-2020 Child Nutrition Program Benefit Application Guidance that is included in the Director Toolkit that was a handout for today. It's most effective to use a team approach to build an understanding when it comes to determining eligibility, and it gives the staff the opportunity to discuss how to handle different situations. If you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at KSDE, because if you can prevent determination errors, it will really help you eliminate costly problems later. We also have some online video tutorials available on our training portal, so be sure to check those out. Determining eligibility webinars will also be coming soon, where we will specifically go into how to determine eligibility. We're going to try and do those in July and August when you guys are getting into the weeds of determining eligibility, so watch the monthly update for information on that. Verification is required each year. There's a few deadlines, so come October 1, you need to complete the pre-verification worksheet that is located in CACFP under the Forms tab. At this time, you will locate the number of applications to verify on the post-verification results page. On October 31st, you need to update the pre-verification worksheet with student numbers only. November 15th is when verification activities must be completed. This means all communication with the household, you should have everything done by this date. December 15th, therefore, is the deadline which you must enter the verification results on the post-verification results page in CACFP. Be sure when you are completing this post-verification results page to enter the date the verification is completed, not the date you enter verification results into CACFP. There's more information in your Director Toolkit on page 10 if you would like to review. We also will have verification training at no cost throughout the state in September, so be sure to check the monthly update for those. We'll have a verification webinar, and there's also online verification training available with a quiz, so you will receive a certificate. A frequently asked question when it comes to verification that we've seen a lot would be, if a household reports income on its meal benefits application, but at verification states they are no longer employed, what must the sponsor do? If this happens, you must follow up and get documentation from the household to support they are unemployed. We can't just accept their word. Unfortunately, you have to have that documentation to support that situation. In announcements and resources, we just have a few things here for frequently asked questions. Online food safety basics. Can a group of employees take food safety basics using KSDE's online training portal? The answer to this is no, because an individual username and password is required for access to the personalized account in KSDE training portal. We recognize one online user per account, and it prints out a certificate of class completion for only that one user. Since food safety is required to be tracked by individual completion in Kansas, each person needs to have their own certificate of completion for either an approved online food safety class or an approved face-to-face food safety training. So that's just important to remember there. Some essential resources would be information that we provided at this workshop. Also check out food service facts in caneat.org under school nutrition programs. Your program agreement is also really important information that you read through that. Don't just sign it and send it off. Make sure that you understand what your responsibilities are as the sponsor and what KSDE's responsibilities are. Also be sure that you read the monthly updates from Child Nutrition and Wellness. If you are a food service director or the authorized representative, you will get these emailed to you as long as your email is correct in the CACFP database. If you are not one of these individuals and you want to look at the monthly updates each month, they are posted on our CANEAT website under What's New in the school nutrition programs. Those are available by the first of each month, so be sure that you check those out because it contains great information on what's going on and important reminders. You can also look at previous year's records to help you with that. To obtain resources, visit our website at www.cane.org under School Nutrition Programs. Make sure that you're regularly checking out the What's New page for announcements and updates. You are also more than welcome to contact Child Nutrition and Wellness at 785-296-2276 or your local child nutrition consultant.